good morning on a very wet and windy Wednesday morning, and welcome to our webinar on Maximising Consent, Managing Soft Opt-ins in Microsoft Dynamics. So my name is Johannes, Johannes Strack. I'm a Business Development Manager here at Enhance. I've been here for about 4 months. I've worked in the non-profit sector for the last 20 years and the last 10 years in the non-profit technology space. We're joined by Rachel Vincent. Rachel, do you want to do a quick intro in terms of who you are and what your background is?
Yep, so I'm the business analyst here at Enhance. I've also been in the charity sector for 20 years. I very much started on the client side of the fence. So the first 15 years of that was actually working within a charity and supporting our supporters in this sort of support relations role, moving into CRM and business analysis. And now I am supporting lots of charities here at Enhance in delivering their CRMs.
Perfect, thank you. So obviously Rachel is going to drive the presentation today and the demonstration in terms of what we're showing today. I'll be the moderator for the presentation today. So in terms of the agenda today, a brief introduction in terms of who Enhance are. I know we've got lots of customers on the line today, so this will be familiar to you, of course, but for the the organizations that don't know us that well, they'll probably be quite welcome. Then we'll dive straight into the agenda in terms of, actually what those changes are in terms of the opt-ins for charities, in terms of what the latest legislation, probably the biggest change since GDPR in that respect, and actually what that means in terms of how you can utilize that that sort of capability in Microsoft Dynamics going forwards, of course. So obviously I'll be the moderator today. So before we get started, just a couple of, the standard housekeeping items that you're familiar with, of course. So in terms of timings, we'll probably take about 45 minutes today. Obviously the webinar is recorded. So, if you want to revisit this or share it with some of your colleagues, obviously you'll be delighted to know it's available on demand. You're all on mute. Obviously standard for webinars, of course. So if you've got questions, please click the Q&A button and please type your question. I'll try my best to answer questions on the fly. If we've got some time at the end, obviously I'll pass them on to Rachel, and if not, obviously we'll ask and respond to those offline, of course, as well. So yeah, feel free to submit your questions at any point during the webinar today. So without further ado, let's get started. So next slide, please. So in terms of, about Enhance, next slide, please, Rachel. A brief background in terms of who we are. So obviously, Enhance as an organization has been active in the nonprofit sector for, quite some time. In fact, the first fundraising project that we've embarked on was back in 2011 for Oxfam Ireland. And, these days, about 85% of our projects are indeed in the nonprofit space. We do work with commercial and public sector clients. So obviously this sort of cross-sector collaboration insight obviously helps nonprofits in that respect as well. In terms of our partnerships, we are closely aligned and work very closely with the Microsoft Tech for Social Impact team. So obviously that's Microsoft's dedicated nonprofit arm, rebranded to Microsoft Elevate this year. And we were a launch partner. So obviously really aligned in terms of our sector expertise and track record of, helping nonprofits achieve their goals. In terms of partnerships with nonprofits, we truly believe in long-term trusted partnerships. So not just short-term projects, but really, being that critical friend that helps you, navigate, through potentially quite difficult periods at the moment, of course, in terms of, CRMs are constantly evolving, and charities evolve too, of course, in terms of expectations from your supporters, from your employees, legislation changes as today, of course, and really our job is to support you on that journey, of course, and whether that's through, webinars like today, events, white papers, conference, etc., or really ongoing strategic support to help you maximize your investment. We obviously want to be that partner that can help navigate the power of technology. And in terms of our ethos, we are, hopefully you'll have seen this in the past, we're honest, we're open, we're transparent. We try to use configuration out-of-the-box tools rather than, smoke and mirrors. And we try to be quite realistic in terms of budgets, timelines, etc. And obviously be quite respectful of your staff, your employees, but also challenge you in terms of making best use of your resources. Obviously, we're aware that Dynamics 365 is a powerful platform used globally across multiple sectors, but really what's critical for us, obviously, is this sort of people first delivery. Projects succeed through change management and through giving your employees agency and involvement in those projects. So it's not just about the tech; it's really about the people. About the people are on the call today, of course, in that respect. And just finally, in terms of our credentials, obviously, yeah, we're very grateful to be awarded Nonprofit Partner of the Year back in 2023, which obviously reflects our credibility, our sector leadership, and obviously successful project delivery time and time again, of course. Obviously, increasingly projects are data-driven, objective-led, of course, and we tend to avoid like-for-like replacements. So the focus is really on transformation, about unearthing data. We've got a data management team, so focusing on data migration, integrations, data warehousing, and really leveraging the latest cutting-edge tools such as Fabric, Factories, and modern tools effectively. And really, obviously, what's hopefully clear today as well, of course, obviously we see ourselves as an industry leader. We want to be the guiding partner through those sort of potentially challenging times, of course, but really want to focus on the fun element as well, of course, to make that sort of digital transformation journey as enjoyable as possible, of course. Next slide, please, Rachel. And really, just a final point from me, of course. We're incredibly grateful to be able to support such a huge variety of organizations, right down from very small grassroots organizations, medium-sized organizations, or up to enterprise global organizations who do large-scale rollouts, of course. And this spans from global grant-making systems that we implemented, obviously plenty of fundraising solutions, especially moving off legacy CRMs. My background is Blackboard, so I know some of those legacy systems quite well, of course. Membership organizations, increasingly help desk and call center solutions, but even some what we might be delighted to hear some fairly bespoke systems like animal rehoming, for example. So those solutions generally start with a vision, and we're delighted to and grateful to play a small part in helping you deliver the incredible work that you do on a daily basis, of course. So really the emphasis there is solutions that are available for all organization sizes, including lower income groups, of course. And final point for me, if you know anyone in the sector that could benefit from partnering with Mhans and modern technologies, please tell them about Mhans, put them in touch with me. Delighted to help, of course. And yeah, without further ado, I'll pass the reins on to Rachel for the the heavy lifting, as we say in the technology space. So over to you, Rachel.
Hi, thanks for that, Johannes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through a little summary of what soft opt-in for charities means. And I'm right now, legal disclaimer, I am not a legal expert. I have researched all of this myself and with the guidance of websites like the ICO. So if you have any questions around the legal issues of the changes that are coming in, please do continue to use your data protection officers and any sort of solicitors or legal advisory firms that you use. I'm not the expert, but I didn't want to go into this without sort of summarising what the changes are and how that will potentially impact. So little legal disclaimer there. So quick summary then of what has changed. So we have had the Data Use and Access Act 2025 has been announced. It is an amendment to the Data Protection Act and UK GDPR. And basically what it is there to do is to sort of, it's actually relaxed and broadened, relaxed some of the policies around what you can do with personal data and broadened all of that sort of scope for you. One of the really helpful things is it's kind of relaxed restrictions around automated decision making and AI, which I think is really positive because it's reflecting just how far AI has moved forward in the last few years, even since UK GDPR was done. And it's certainly something that we're seeing our clients leveraging, wanting to leverage their data a lot more to do really intelligent data selections and things like that to get the best out of their marketing campaigns by targeting the right kind of supporters. So it's really nice that the legislation has kind of eased a little bit to allow a lot more sort of manipulation and management of data and more intelligent usages of that. Hence, we are working with our existing clients as well as new clients coming in terms of setting up the framework and enabling that. So if you are interested in using AI, just let us know, because that's something that we're definitely championing. It is huge for Microsoft at the moment, and obviously we're working hand in hand with them to sort of ensure that that is something that can be optimized. We also have elements around restriction around website cookies, and also less intrusive or crazy subject access requests where you don't have to find every piece of detail about a person anymore. It's more about being reasonable and proportionate and a little bit more succinct in what you need to do, so it's not such a horrific ordeal when you get a subject access request, but also introducing new sort of elements of legitimate interest. And within that, it has the soft opt-in for charities. So what do we mean by the soft opt-in? This is where we are now seeing a shift from currently, at the moment, we have a supporter has to proactively opt in to receiving e-marketing. That's emails, SMS, social media marketing. And what this is going to do with the soft opt-in is it's meaning that it goes from them having to opt in to them having to opt out. So it's kind of going in the direction of where we are at the moment with post and telephone fundraising and communications. So it is switching it to that side of things. So they don't need to opt in, but when you gather their their contact details, you do need to give them the opportunity to opt out. And then in any subsequent communication that you send to them via that channel, you need to be able to show them that how to opt out. There's got to be some way of them to be able to opt out at that point. It's really specifically about new people. So it's not people that you've already got in your system. So we can't apply it retrospectively to pre-existing supporters. Their preferences and their consents are what they are now, and they have to tell you if they want that changing. But for new people coming in, you can switch the sort of narrative a little bit, so it becomes that they have to opt out rather than opt in. So that's the kind of the main thrust of where we are with the soft opt-in. So what happens now? Well, right at the moment, this soft opt-in has not come into force. The Data Use and Access Act will be rolled out in phases off the back of other legislations coming through. So it's really important that you don't just go, oh, great, we can just switch our email and SMS and social media marketing to opt out only. You have to wait, and it's really important that you keep an eye on those sources like the ICO, potentially the fundraising regulator will be offering guidance, but obviously your data protection officers and any sort of legal advice that you get around that, keep in contact with them, keep monitoring as to when this actually comes into force. Obviously, I know that a lot of you are already doing this, but I'm sure there's a lot of charities at this point in time reviewing your marketing policies, your processes, and it's really important that your soft opt-in is around positive action. So the supporter has to do something positive to and not opt out for you to be able to use that opt-in. So what constitutes positive action? It is usually it's asking for information about your organisation. It's maybe making a donation. So it's something proactive and positive where they've given you their details in the course of something positive. I do not think you will get away with starting emailing people if their only interaction with you was to complain. That is not a positive action. So you've got to determine what are you going to class as positive action that would mean that you have that legitimate interest to start e-marketing to them. Obviously, there'll be lots of people making these decisions, doing data protection impact assessments to determine how appropriate it is, working with, maybe you might have a supporter survey group where you can ask them questions and understand what would work well for you and for your supporter base. And then obviously you need to make sure that your systems are up to speed and able to deliver that. It's a relatively small change in that you should already be able to capture whether they've opted in or out of emails, SMS, social media. So it may just be a little tweak to around that. And then updating staff training. One thing, I mean, I've been in the sector for a long time. I have lots of friends that I've worked with in the past who are now across lots of different charity organisations. And one thing I would say is that not every charity, I've spoken to a lot of my friends, and not everyone is going to go straight in and do soft opt out on all email on e-marketing, and they're not just all going to just go, right, that's it, we can email everyone now. That's not what's happening. I know that every charity, in the same way with UK GDPR and GDPR back in 2018, everyone sort of made their decisions about what they felt comfortable and what was appropriate for them. So we're not assuming that everyone is going to go, yay, let's email everyone that's new. We appreciate that there's a lot of conversation going on there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to show you our sales version of Dynamics, which is what we use when we're doing presentations to potential clients, but also what we use when we're doing discovery workshops and showing clients how things work currently ahead of configuration. So I'm just going to bring Dynamics up on the screen. Hopefully you can all see that. And this is, as I mentioned, you may already know and be familiar with it, but Save the Dodo is our fake charity that we do use as a sort of example Dynamics environment. This is a very base level environment. What we find with charity clients is that consent and preferences vary massively between one organisation and the next. So what I'm going to show you now is very bare bones. It's kind of a starting point from which we then do configuration. After I've done this quick demo of what it looks like here, I will show you some examples from our clients, just screen grabs, because I can't bring up their systems and show them. And obviously I've got to keep it anonymised as to who I'm presenting, but I'm going to show you what some other charities have done with this as their sort of ground point and moving forward. So we've got our sort of standard contact of Ethel, and you can see we have a tab specifically for consent and preferences. So I'm going to click on that. And what we have here is the very core out of the box fields that Dynamics comes with. And we have our preferred contact method, which has those options, and you can tell it's American and Microsoft because they still have faxes. And obviously we would change that because I don't think anyone still uses faxes, but they love it in America. And then we have these basic allow, do not allows on phone call, email and mail, but also bulk email and bulk mail. So you can see we have the capacity to make changes and just do a very simple allow, do not allow. So that just kind of captures the sort of core level of what can we do with this individual. Fortunately, Ethel is very happy for us to contact her no matter what. We also have this element at the bottom called the consent declaration. And what the point of the consent declaration is to capture when that consent was given. So I'm just going to create a new one here for Ethel. And again, this is very sort of out of the box. As someone who's worked in charities, I would also add some extra fields personally, and I'll show you a bit of that from other clients. But we have the concept out of the box that it might be that someone is giving permission for this consent on behalf of someone else. So it might be that it's a parent giving consent on behalf of their child. So that's why we have these for and by fields. Obviously, Ethel's not obviously, but Ethel's a grown up in this situation. She can give consent for herself. And we have the ability to say what day that it was. And we also have the concept of being able to say that it doesn't start until a later date. I'm going to go with today. So this is just capturing the really raw data. I would personally also add a source campaign or a source code onto this little table to say I can trace them signing up to this consent statement off the back of this particular mailing or this particular web page. So I would have that extra source campaign field here to say that's the source of this consent. So once I've saved that declaration, I can then add consent lines. So what that looks like, on the right hand side we have a quick form, so we can say what type of consent, and we have some people that just keep it as basic permissions, but we have some clients that say, well, I want to be able to specify what type of comms. For this case, I'm going to go with general rather than campaign or fundraising. And we have the concept of 3 options: no response, opt out, opt in. And what happens with that is when it's a no response, that means that you haven't actually asked them the question or they haven't commented. So it's sort of accepting that we don't know what they've said on this occasion, but they've already got a consent declaration where they previously told us that they wanted to opt into email. Then that would remain the prevailing one. It's just that they haven't updated it on this instant of giving consent. So I'm just going to add in a few here, and I'm going to save that. And what we see now is on this declaration, we can see underneath that this is what they've signed up to on this declaration and what they've opted into. So we have this idea. Now, if it was a new client, a new contact, and it's following the soft opt-in and Ethel didn't give us a response on email, we would say then that potentially she would then allow email to be sent to her, depending on that type of that action that we first met her with. At this point, we can now see that declaration has been added onto here, but just because this is a very basic system, these have remained unchanged. I'm now going to show you some client stuff where we actually automate the population of the basic do not allow fields, the consent sort of statements, just for the purposes of this declaration. So the first client I'm going to show you, they've tweaked their form. First and foremost, they work a lot with social media influencers, so they wanted to have their social media details on their consents table. We can see over here on the right, they still have those allow, do not allow fields, but they've been padlocked, and that's because, as I talked about with their declarations on the left here, which is that same declaration table I went into, they had that being able to trigger updating these core consent fields here. You'll also see they actually have done allow, do not allow on certain themes of contact and marketing. So this person has said you can contact me about campaigns, community and events and financial asks, but don't contact me about gift aid. So they've gone for another set of do not allows and allows on particular themes of what communications they are willing to hear about. So in addition to the channel consent, they've also got consents around the theme and their preferences. And they've kept their declaration form, if I click onto that, as very basic. They've just got, it's a global opt-in, out, what have you. So this one, they've changed what they were going to do. So they've said they were previously on opt-in for post and opt out of SMS and email and telephone. So those were all previously opted out with just an opt-in on post. On this consent update, they've told us, no, I don't want to get post, but I do want to get phone calls and text message, and I haven't updated their email. And so what that looks like is when we've actually filled in that little bit of consent. This is their consent form where they've actually given us the channels and what type it is. And when that was saved, a process ran in the back end, and we can now see that their phone, SMS, email, mail channels have updated based upon what that was. Because email started as do not allow, and they didn't respond on what they wanted to do with their email when they gave their next consent declaration, it's kept the do not allow on the email, but it's changed phone call and SMS and mail based on those. So that's an automated process off the back of their consent declaration. Moving to a different client now, and what they've actually done is they've scrapped all of the out-of-the-box fields and they've gone with their own setup, and that's completely fine because we accept every charity is different and Dynamics is completely configurable to meet your needs. So the way that they've done it is they've created this concept of channel permissions, and that's more of a generic thing where they've merged together the consent declaration and the consent channel lines together. And they've got a permission date and campaign response for each of the 4 channels as their summary at the top. They're all padlocked because they're all automatically set based on their channel permissions records. At the moment, on this example, all the campaign response fields are left empty, but that's where you would put the source campaign that they responded to when they updated their consents. So this is their channel permission form that they filled in. So this is where they said what type of channel it is and what they permission level. They went with, instead of opt-in, opt-out and no response, they actually had different set of permission levels which you could choose from. And again, they've got their campaign response to say which source campaign it was. They haven't put that as mandatory, so obviously that's why they've been able to leave it blank. I've worked with lots of charities who would say that that is absolutely mandatory. We need to know exactly which source campaign they responded to when they did give their consent update. And the final client example I'm just going to give is using some really nice new functionality. They have a very similar process to how our first example client works, where they're using that consent declaration and then they've got the consent type underneath. But we've got this lovely new nested table functionality. So without having to click into the declaration to see the consent lines that are against it, you can see we can just click on the drop down here, and underneath we can see what they consented to in that declaration, which makes it really visible from that record there. So it's quite nice how things are moving, and we've been able to add extra features as these are coming through. So that's that one. So basically our key points here is that Microsoft Dynamics is really configurable. We will build to your needs, whether that's you as a new client coming in and we're in the discovery phase and in the build phase with you. We will sort of tailor what we build and use the functionality in Dynamics where possible. But if it doesn't work for you as an organization, that's fine. We can tweak that. If you already are a client with an up and live system, when it comes to all these changes, if there's anything that you want to do, we're here to sort of support you in making those changes. So out of the box, we have those channel-based consents, those do not allow fields. And what we can do is we can set the defaults of those. So it might be after soft opt-in comes into force that we change the default for email, SMS, and social media when you create a new contact. So it's probably likely that if you use those fields now, you create a new contact, those fields will all automatically set to do not allow. What we can do is have those automatically set to allow without anyone needing to change it, unless that first contact would not constitute a positive action. We then have our consent declarations capturing the details of the instance where they provided their consents, and we can add source campaign that triggered that update. With that source campaign triggering update, I've actually got a client that I've worked with who they had the consent declaration wording that was used on each form, and that is associated with that source campaign. So from the consent declaration that someone's given, you can click through to the campaign and then click through to see the exact wording that they signed up against. So we can really build in a really transparent system. So if they do question, why did you start emailing me? You can actually go through and follow it through to say, okay, this is the form that you filled in and you didn't opt out of the email, which is why we started emailing you. So you can really build that level of detail in. And we also, obviously with the first charity example that I gave you, we automate the setting of those out-of-the-box channel-based consents based off the consent declaration and associated consent lines. We also have additional preferences that can be presented by channels, so that the idea of having that global or general or campaigning comms in the consent line, but also as allow, do not allow fields, like with our first example. We also have some clients that have actual subscription mailings, so it might be their quarterly magazine or something, and they actually want that as a subscription rather than a consent line. So it's really highly configurable. We work with what you need to achieve. Obviously, you know, I've briefed all of our consultants on this new soft opt-in functionality internally, so hopefully our consultants will support you and wave their hand and say, actually, we don't think you're interpreting the rules properly, can we just double check? And I've done that in the past with clients where I've just gone, I think you need to check with your data protection officer about what you're asking us to do in this system, because we don't think it's within the remit of UK GDPR or whichever act we are looking at that point. So we'll always try and keep up to date internally to ensure that what we provide for you and develop for you is legally working. So I'm just going to hand back over to Johannes, because I've finished talking through all of the exciting stuff you need to know.
Thank you, Rachel. Super insightful and helpful, and plenty of food for thought. I think we've got a couple of questions. So someone said we use the consent grid in NFP. I presume that this could all work with that too?
Yes, yeah, it can be. I know that's our earlier version. I remember having it installed on the charity that I used to work for. So yes, I think we can make the tweaks that are needed to support it on that consent grid. Yeah.
Thank you. Brilliant. Obviously, you know, we'll still keep the chat open for now, and happy to you know, if people want to email us directly as a follow-up, please do so. So before we wrap things up, just wanted to highlight a couple of future events and webinars. You know, if you want to have hear more from us and get your enhanced fix over the next couple of weeks and months, we're here for you. So obviously we've got a couple of roundtables next week, open to our customers, of course, both in terms of our Business Central customers and our CRM customers. Next week, we are at the Hart Square TechSmart conference later this month, and obviously you've got a couple of webinars in terms of latest wave releases across a couple of Microsoft solutions. Charity IT leaders, Charity Finance Summit, and then the big one. We've got our own event kind of in November, following on from the huge success of our event back in February earlier this year. So this is a spotlight on Dynamics Data and Copilot. It's in London, 19th November. We'd love to see as many of you there as possible. It's looking like a a really interesting agenda. So obviously you'll hear from us, of course, but yeah, would love to see as many of you as possible, of course. And then the final ones, obviously, there's a couple of particular festive roundtables and conferences that we're looking to attend as well. But the communication channels are always open. If you see us at an event, do come by, of course, and you'd love to see you going forwards, of course. So yeah, that concludes today's session. Thank you all for joining us. Thanks, Rachel, for this super helpful, insightful overview in terms of soft opt-ins. Yeah, keep a lookout in your inboxes the next couple of days. We'll send you a link to the recording today. Yeah, once again, thank you for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.